welcome to episode number 2 of Oops All Dragons. Today we're going to be talking about DM stuff. So Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa.
You're here.
I am. Every week, baby.
How you doing?
I'm good. I got an empty bottle of water and the will to live, I guess.
That's the most important thing. Especially
it's the most you can ask from anyone here in August of 2020.
Well, I was going to say it's the most important thing in being a DM. Just, you gotta carry on sometimes.
Yeah. Of course. Very relevant to the topic of the day. So, yes, you've DM'd a very long time.
Very long time. Yeah, I guess at this point. Although it pales in comparison to some other folks.
Yeah, of course. We've all got our own mountains to climb. I mean, I've been DMing for a few months now. I mean, if you don't count, like, the times I've been thrown to the sharks before.
By me.
Yeah. I've been DMing consistently for a few months now, and I got a lot of feelings about it. I had a lot of feelings about it at the beginning, and I got even more feelings about it now. So, of course, as with our player basics, our, like, conversations about playing and being a player in D&D, DM stuff, how to DM, what makes a good DM, aspects of DMing. These are all topics that we're going to end up coming back to over and over again. It's kind of our bread and butter. We talk about this a lot. We have hours and hours and hours of thoughts to share.
We do, especially you.
For no good reason, but
I mean, I do too, in a different realm.
Which is why we're here to share.
Yeah. So you've been doing for a couple months. I've been running games now for about 5 years, I believe. It was late 2015, I think. Almost that 5-year anniversary. And I think I mentioned in the first episode, Pathfinder, first edition, running my first campaign with all of the books on and just letting the players do whatever they wanted. And hoo boy, was that a trip and a lot of math.
Yeah. Yeah. I had some of my first interactions with trying to get people to play D&D with me was I had a friend who played Pathfinder, and I would always ask her, please teach me how to play. And she's like, you're not going to like what I play.
Yep.
I play Pathfinder. I don't play D&D. And you know?
Your friend was smart.
She was right.
We'll say it up the top. We're going to have lots of opinions about dungeon mastering, but we love dungeon mastering. We wouldn't do it if we didn't, because...
We wouldn't play this game at all if we didn't like it.
Yeah. The dungeon master, in most cases, has more work, more lifting on their shoulders than the rest of the players, but they are a player in the game. And we've got, like, a broad list of, like, bullet points that we're going to touch on for newer folks coming in who maybe want to hear about what it's like to start becoming a dungeon master for the first time. Yeah,
I mean, there's no shortage these days of people who want to play this game and be a player, but if you are one of the few who want to DM, or if you've never even considered DMing, this is really for you. This is to let you know that, like, it's a doable thing.
Yeah. We're getting the kind of the concrete stuff that pretty much has a right and wrong answer out up front, and then we're going to delve into some of the deeper stuff a little later, either in the end of this podcast if we can get into it, or just another episode where we get some of our other Dungeon Master friends on and talk about how much of an existential nightmare the Mercer effect is.
Yeah, that's a whole hour on its own, so we're not going to get into it. But we're acknowledging it here for anyone who is like, but what about... Yeah, no, we know we're going to talk about it. Don't worry. But, yeah, to begin with, Varun,
first bullet.
What the heck is a DM? Who is that?
So, we were talking about this before we started recording. There's lots of answers that people will give you on what the Dungeon Master is, but taken down to the barest bones interpretation. And I think the kind of the most healthiest for someone to approach it as is you are the interpreter of the universe. You are not God. You're not a character in the game necessarily. You are not, don't have to be at least, the organizer of the group. You're not the arbiter of fun. You don't have to be the one that is making sure everyone's having fun in the way that they want to have fun. You're there to tell the story and be in control of the things that the players aren't in control of.
Yeah, you're there to make sure that they have things to decide upon and consequences for those decisions. Your job is not necessarily to be God and to enact punishment. There's definitely some people who think that, and like, it's all fun and games when your players at the table are like, "Hey God, can I do this? Hey,
can I have
God,
inspiration, God?"
And like, that's fun. That's cute. I will never say don't do that. I think it's hilarious.
I
Don't let that actually get into your head. You're not God.
I don't.
You're a guide at best.
Yeah, you're a cipher for the universe. You say what is success and what's a failure, and you plot out the kind of course that the players are going to go on. But they should be the decision makers, and depending on what type of game it is, the Dungeon Master can have more or less control on where the story goes. Which just brings us into the next big thing to remember: collaboration and communication. Those are the two most important things that you need to have as a Dungeon Master.
We harp on communication a lot and collaboration a lot. It's those are two things that I know we brought those up last time, and we're gonna bring it up again because you need to be talking to each other.
Yeah. So, and it's not a necessity, but it's definitely 99.9% a necessity. I know that sounds like gibberish, but in some cases there's the groups where they just do D&D as a social thing. They're running out of a book, and it may not be a particularly thing that they're invested in. So okay, they already have a lot of the framework already in place. Those groups exist, and they're totally fine. But in the games where the players want more agency, or the Dungeon Master wants to create their own story, you've got to communicate with your players, because one, you're communicating, okay, what's the story that the Dungeon Master wants to get across? Ooh, is it going to be dungeon crawl? Is it going to be very roleplay heavy? Is it going to be very politic-y? What sort of aesthetic are you going for? And are the players all okay with that? And then what are their backstories, and how can that play into the game? Because no matter how nice you think the world that you create is, if the players don't have any stake in it, they're not going to care. And the game's not going to be particularly fun. So that's the collaboration side of it too.
Yeah. That's where we get into sort of what we were talking last time with players creating backstories for their characters. This is where the DM's role comes in if you're playing in a homebrew setting, or even if you're playing in
Forgotten Realms.
God. Yes, Forgotten Realms.
Theros, any of those places.
Very apt that I forgot the name.
On a D&D podcast.
How dare I? Everybody's gonna be in the comments like, "Oh, she's fake."
fake gamer girl.
Fake DM girl. Shit. If I'm fake, why am I in 4 games a week?
Yep, you're in more games than I am.
Oh, I'm an overachiever in all things. I'm gonna talk about collaboration. We're starting to talk about collaboration, right? So, making sure the players have agency and are involved and are engaged. The easiest way to do that is having that session 0. As a DM,
we're going to touch on session 0 in a second. Because I want to dig into the collaboration part of it beyond, in more mechanical terms on what that means too. Because a collaboration, house rules are collaboration. Because if you're going to change the rules as written to the game, totally fine. Any Dungeon Master worth their salt will say, yeah, do whatever is fun for your group, but you have to be clear and communicate that to the group. So if you're using flanking in your game, tell your players that you're using flanking. Don't just say like, oh, the enemies get around you and all of a sudden they have advantage to hit you when they shouldn't.
The other thing with that is being consistent. So that's part of that collaboration, that communication is, okay, in our situation, we're going to use flanking rules, but that means that that's a benefit to you, but that's also a benefit to anyone who fights against you. So it's similar to when you take a screenwriting class and they tell you that like the rules of your world, and this is like any sort of creative writing situation, if you're writing something that's not, even things that happen, even things that are set in like the real world, there are rules for the world. There's physics and there's like hierarchies and whatever. So if your homebrewed setting has like you have some specific stuff going on with like magic or equipment or fighting or something like that, be consistent about it, because that's where those kind of plot holes and things will fall through the cracks and things will stop making sense, and
or the game just becomes unfair.
Yeah, you can break your own game in doing that.
Yeah. So same thing on the line of collaboration. I mentioned it before, but the Dungeon Master is in fact not the arbiter of fun. It is not your job to make sure that everybody's having fun. Everyone at the table is a player. So the players playing in your world should be having fun in the way that, okay, we talked about what characters we're going to create. We talked about what sort of setting we're going to be in. We're talking about how much control they're going to have over their decisions, and then play in that world. And then you as the Dungeon Master shouldn't be pulling your hair out at, they're doing something completely different, or they want something that we didn't even like talk about. If that happens and you're starting to run a game and the players are going left when you're going right, then talk to them. Get together and say like, okay, we discussed like this. We said we were going to have a roleplay heavy campaign, but you guys just want to murder everything. If you want to do that, that's fine, but I'm going to have to reconfigure some things. I'm going to have to change around the game a little bit. And then on that same vein, you should be having fun too as a Dungeon Master. You shouldn't be like, okay, it's a lot of work for me, and it's kind of work when I'm running it, but as long as the other players are having fun, you're fine. If you're not particularly enjoying the game that you're running, that's a lot of effort for, like, not having fun.
It shouldn't feel like a job. It shouldn't feel like an obligation. It shouldn't feel draining. It should be something that you genuinely enjoy doing. If you notice a
job is a better way to put it, yeah.
Yeah, you can even be like far into a game, but if you realize that it's not like sitting well with you, you're not having fun, the direction is not, you're not like enjoying it, you're not having fun, you have every right to say, hey guys, I'm not really feeling good about this.
Yeah.
So I want to take a break, either from this game in particular, or even from DMing entirely.
Yeah.
Or
that can happen
take
in
a step.
Oh,
go ahead.
That can happen in longer games, because, and I guess we'll talk about this when we go into more like crafting a story and creating a world and all of that. But sometimes Dungeon Masters start running their own games, start creating their own world, but the campaign or the quest that the players are on doesn't have a defined end. So that's, one-way ticket to Dungeon Master burnout, where you find yourself a year long into this thing that you created and you realize you've lost the plot, but you aren't really having fun when the players just kind of do whatever in the game, if things are just kind of aimless.
Yeah. And on the flip side of that, you hear stories about like games that go on for decades that are like the same game that's been going on for a long time.
Those are nuts.
That's nuts. It's completely bonkers, but it's entirely possible.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have to hold yourself up to that standard.
You do not.
You just have to do what you're able to do. Like, you're just a person. And that's good.
And you mentioned this in the last session, and I think we're both going to mention this multiple times. This is a game. So
this is a game.
If you're not having fun at any point, you can reassess and say, like you said, Lisa, is this a game I want to be running? Do I want to be the Dungeon Master? It could be something like the system might be wrong, or some house rule that you created, or some weird item has unbalanced the game. Those things can be fixed in the world or in the mechanics, but if you're not having fun with maybe the group dynamic, with the other players in the group, outside of the game itself, or where the story is going, or maybe even real life gets in the way, and that's another thing we'll talk about, of just sometimes it becomes too much like a job, and instead of being a cool project you work on, it feels more like an obligation. Those are all things that you should feel free to communicate to your players. You should never feel that you have to be separate from them.
Yeah, those are all completely valid reasons to say, yeah, hey guys, I need a break.
It happens all the time.
If they're people who are worth playing with, they're going to understand.
Yeah.
If they get pissy about it, then
that may
you're
not
better off.
Yeah, that may not be the group for you. And then
I can understand that, like, it might be frustrating for a group of people, for the players to hear, like, the person that they finally got a DM, because again, DMs are hard to find. They finally got a DM, and then the DM burns out, and I get it. That's frustrating, but
although from my experience, at least,
do is to DM.
Yeah, exactly. From my experience, once you have a group of friends, and this is kind of less so maybe with online groups where you maybe don't know the people as well, but if you're running a game with people that you know, and they see that you can pick up a book and learn how to Dungeon Master, and they can see the fun that you can craft and the games that you can create for them, they might, in a lot of cases, want to do it themselves, sometimes on like a one-off basis. But in other cases, some of them start their own campaigns that Dungeon Master can take a break from running his own stuff to play in. That happened with one of our friends. That happened with you. You were playing for what, like a year or something, and then I literally threw you into the deep end of the pool of, hey, you called me out to this thing where your friend said he needed some players for a game, but no one agreed to be on the dungeon to be the Dungeon Master. So I just volunteered you, and that's how we started.
Yeah, that's what I get for being late.
Everyone called not it, and you weren't there, so there you go.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the collaboration side, collab with your players on stories and stuff, but also collab in like how you're feeling. You should be open to feedback, and this is also on the communication side of actual mechanical things you can do during the session. At the end of the session, ask for feedback. Ask what did they like, what did they not like. Make sure, just check, did everyone have fun in the session? If someone didn't have fun, and not to say like, oh, sometimes you can even lose. You can lose the battle, but it could have been a really good role play session, and the players had fun doing that.
On the topic of getting feedback, I saw something on ye old Twitter this week. Twitter user Justice Armon. He has a blog, and he talks about D&D, and he posted. He has like a survey, like a literal survey that's like a couple pages long.
Okay.
That he will send to his players like once or twice a year.
Oh.
Or like however long
Nice.
that campaign is going, he'll send it. Like, periodically he'll send the survey in, and it's stuff like rate 1 to 5 your level of enjoyment for the following common elements of a D&D session. It's like travel, puzzles, dialogue. This is genius. I'll put a link in the description for it.
Yeah. I've heard of other DMs doing something similar, but your boy sounds like he's kind of formalized it and formalized it.
Yeah, I mean, I like, yes, this feels a lot like homework because the survey can take like 20 minutes to fill out, but at the end of it, it's going to fill in a lot of those gaps where, like, as the DM, the things that make you nervous of like, am I doing travel too much? Am I doing too much battle? Am I
doing this right?
Am I doing this right? Am I giving them what they want, and am I doing what I want? And, like, I think something like that, like a little survey, or, something as simple as asking at the end of a session for feedback is very good ways of then, like, adjusting and, like, while, yes, you are not the arbiter of fun, you are in control of kind of what happens, like, the pieces that go into the game for the players. So in that sense, you are a little bit the arbiter of fun. So it's good to find out, like, exactly where you guys can meet in the middle and make sure that there are...
I mean, it's good storytelling.
Yeah, and make sure that there's stuff in there that matches, like, the vibe of the people that you're playing with, because you could be playing with people who they just want to do a dungeon crawl, they just want to, like, kill monsters and get loot, and, like, that's great, okay, but if you don't find that out, if you are a few sessions in with those people, with that kind of group, and you're not finding this out, and you're trying to do, like, a political drama, well, then nobody's having fun.
Yeah, and I think
they're not going to respond in the way that you want to your story, and they're not going to be getting the kind of gameplay that they want.
Yeah, they're going to be bored.
It's not going to be satisfactory to anybody.
Yeah, and I think a better way to phrase it, you're not the sole arbiter of fun.
Yeah, everyone, it's a collaborative thing. Making sure that everybody has fun is the responsibility of everybody at that table.
And last couple things.
Zoom call.
Last couple things I had, take notes, and that's just generally a good thing to do. Have a notebook or take it on your phone, type it on the keyboard, record the sessions, just some way so you have some record of what happened in that session, because you will forget things. Unless you have, like, a photographic or eidetic memory, you're just gonna forget stuff that happened.
Yeah, I have the memory of a goldfish. I will say the name of, like, the barkeep, and if I don't write it down
literally 1 minute later,
literally, like, half a minute later, I'll be like, hey, wait, what did I name her again? Was it even a woman? Was she human? Where are you? Hold on, what's happening?
We're speaking from experience here.
Yeah.
The other thing, you've rolled into communication, and this goes with setting up sessions, but also during the sessions, and manage your time properly. So ahead of the time, find out what times to meet, but also, like, session length and that sort of thing are good for your players. And then during those sessions, manage your time. So if you see that, hey, the players are really role-playing, but and they're having fun, but they're not doing the thing that they came here to do, you don't want to push them and railroad them into the quote-unquote, the real quest, because you can have fun just role-playing for an entire session. But if you know that they're the type of players where they want to get something done that session, start to move them along and have little things in the game just to kind of nudge them in the direction that they're supposed to be going, because this is a time commitment. Everybody's getting together. Everyone's taking time out of their day or night or whatever it is to do this thing together. And especially if your campaign has a set, like, end point that either you or the players are aware of, then you want to maximize your time, because real life will inevitably get in the way of Dungeons & Dragons and groups. People move, schedules change, people go to school, people get into relationships, and just, the schedules change. So you think you may have, an infinite number of sessions to get your story or get your game done. You don't. I'm not going to say you may not, you don't. Eventually, something's going to come and disrupt your normal kind of flow that you have with your group.
Yeah, sadly, in this day and age, no one does everything consistently every single week unless they're getting paid to do it.
I know some of those folks.
Yeah, I mean, me either. I mean, I do a lot of things that I don't get paid for, but here I am. I think that brings us... Does that bring us to session 0, or am I still getting ahead of myself?
The last thing I had was actions have consequences, which I think falls squarely into the communication point of just making sure that the players know what's going on. So, and my friend whose game I'm in has a bit of an issue with this, because it comes with describing the situation you're in, making sure they understand what's going on, making sure they have a good grasp on the stakes, and then when there is failure, make sure that it's either because the dice went bad, or that the players made a decision that they were, they fully understood the consequences to as a player. They may not have fully understood it as a character in the game, but if the player does something that gets them killed that they did not know could have gotten them killed on session 1, you have failed as a communicator, because then you haven't set the stakes of this can kill you, or this could be extremely dangerous, and this character that you created and may have had a backstory for is now dead. That is a recipe for, like, campaign or session killers, where the Dungeon Master thinks that the players know everything that's going on, but they are in fact not psychic, and they don't know everything that's going on in your head. So communication in the sense of, when there is success and when there's failure, communicate your setting, all of that very clearly. I brought up my friend because she's very general with her descriptions of, okay, you go into a room. Okay, what's in the room? Oh, it's kind of a normal room. Do you know what that means, Lisa?
Room? Yeah, no. Is it a bedroom? Is it a living room? Is it an office? Is it a library? Is it even basic descriptors? It could be like a laboratory.
That's just a literal example from the game. You walk into the room and we ask, okay, well, what's in the room? What type of room is this? It just looks like a normal room. We were pulling our hair out of like, what? What does that mean?
Is there a stove? Come on, give me anything to work with. Is it just a single chair in the middle of an empty room? That is...
that says something, but avoid generalities in how you're describing things, because then you can't... If you say your players walk into a normal room, and then they wait 5 minutes, and then a bomb explodes and kills them, you can't be mad when they're mad at you because you didn't tell them about the bomb, or that there was a bed they could have examined and saw that there was a bomb under,
or that that this was a room where bombs get made. Like, you're in a room, it's a normal room. Anything else? It looks like it's a room where they make bombs. Oh, okay, got it.
And we mentioned that because then that avoids in-game like stress getting outside of the game, because then the players are no longer angry at the dice or angry at something that happened in the story. They're angry at you, the DM.
Yeah. And
that brings us to session 0.
It's a game. You shouldn't lose friends over it. But like at the end of the day, it's a game.
Session 0, Lisa. So how important is that?
Oh God, so important. And session 0 doesn't have to be like a single session. It
helps.
And for those who don't know, we're saying session 0, what does that mean? It's essentially a chance to get together, all the players and the DM to get together to discuss characters and setting, and a lot of people use that as an opportunity to roll characters. The DM
see if their
use that as an
characters
opportunity.
have combined backstories.
Yeah, and the DM can use that as an opportunity to work with the players to flesh out bits of the world and stuff like that. And like, for example, for my game, I didn't have a singular session 0 because in talking with all of my players, they all sort of agreed on, like, no, I don't want anybody to know my backstory, and I don't want to know anybody's backstory. So it worked out in that way, which...
It's not background noise. That's just me.
I know you have opinions, Varun, but this is how I'm running my game. Go run your games.
No, this isn't. Well, it's kind. I'm not gonna cast aspersions one way or another. This is me as a player, just like, I wish I had some hints on some folks' backstories, because then it would be really. It would be easier to dig into them, which is a big part of the session 0 like collaboration of, two characters want to be orcs. Oh, do you want to be brothers? Oh, well.
Or is that racist? All orcs aren't brothers, Varun.
Well,
they're not all related. On.
But I'll blow through some of these.
But can I finish?
Oh no, go ahead.
Thank you.
I didn't know you were done.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I wasn't done. But yeah, so my players wanted, sort of agreed on doing like one-on-one session 0s. So I got together with each one of them over the phone or over coffee back in the before times when we could get coffee with people, and discuss character. And for some of my players who weren't like familiar with a lot of the classes and races, like who had a character concept but didn't know how to like build it mechanically as a D&D character, I worked with them to figure out, like, okay, so you want your characters, your character's backstory is this, that, and that, and
that's the other big benefit of session 0 for the newer players. Walk them through the mechanics so that your first session isn't just trying to introduce the game and trying to get the story going while trying to explain initiative.
Yeah, and it's a good chance to be like, okay, you want your character's backstory to be this, okay, then it would make sense for your character to be this race and this class,
and that's what this means in the world.
Yeah, and your homework from here on out is to learn how to play this class and learn about this race, and I will tell you more about, like, if it's a homebrew campaign, I will tell you more about how they fit into my world, or you can tell me and you can help me build that out, and that's part of that collaboration and helping them engage, and figure out what kind of. So if your character's like this, what does that mean about, the society that they come from, and all of that. All that stuff is stuff that you can get out in session 0. So if you as the DM are freaking out about, like, oh no, we want to get started like 2 weeks from now and my world is not complete, you don't have to have a complete world, because your world should be, it's never going to feel complete, first of all.
Never.
But a lot of the work is going to get done in that session 0 or those session 0s.
Yeah, I'll go out on the limb and say your world shouldn't feel complete from the start, because the players haven't gotten into it yet. If everything's already in place, like, what are they going to do? What
are they doing? Yeah. The point of telling a story is how is this group that we are following
affect that?
Protagonists, how are they affecting the world?
Yeah. Session 0 is all about expectations. Setting expectations.
Setting expectations, setting tone,
the tone of the game.
That's where you figure out, like, oh, you're all calling yourselves stuff like Boblin and, I don't know, Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Yeah, Boblin the Goblin. One person wants to be Goku from Dragon Ball Z.
Danny Elfman. Danny Elfman with a gun.
So maybe this isn't like a particularly serious tone we're going for.
Okay, cool. So then you know that, like, whatever you have planned so far, you can start, steering in the direction. That's where you can make sure that, like, if your players want to go left, you are prepared to go left, and if your players want to go right, you're prepared to go right.
And beyond that, the actual, like, on the ground stuff. Okay, during that session 0, talk about if you haven't talked about it already, what sort of schedule do you want to keep? Every week, every other week, every month? How many, when are your sessions going to be? How long are the sessions? Because again, how many hours are people going to have to commit when they're not working and whatever else? If you have the answer, or just throw that to the group. How long do you plan the campaign to go on? Like, does everyone have a few months that they can contribute, or do they want a very open-ended thing and we'll figure out an ending at some point? And the major thing in session 0, from just a social perspective, who's going to organize the players? Because that doesn't have to be the dungeon master.
Send the text in the group chat like, "Hey, are we still good?"
Keep the Google Calendar updated.
Yeah. Which, if you end up being lucky enough that everyone consistently has the same afternoon off every 2 weeks, great. So the most work that the organizer is going to have to do is send the text the day before and be like, okay, we're still good? Do we need to reschedule? What's up? And then everybody just sends a thumbs up emoji and you're like, all right, cool, see y'all at 6. Or, somebody says, hey, I'm in the middle of moving. Can we postpone for next week? Or, somebody can take control of my character for this week. That's fine. Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. Because if left to their own devices, for the most part, a group of people are not going to communicate. Mm-hmm. Unless somebody, prods them.
Yeah. And the Dungeon Master usually falls.
That is completely natural. It happens with every single group. And it does usually end up falling on the DM, but there can be someone who is specifically assigned to be the person to send the message.
It's usually the Dungeon Master because they're just in that default position of kind of authority over the rest of the group because they're telling the story.
You're
but
the kindergarten teacher leading the kids on the rope.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you are.
So, all right. So we're talking about what a Dungeon Master is. You've already gotten your books. You're starting to get the rules. You've gotten your players together for session 0.
Or you don't have the books and you just do things that are not that we're not necessarily condoning. Hi, wizards.
I didn't think we were, just gonna mention that.
Or watching some YouTube videos and using the website that doesn't sponsor us, so we are not going to mention. There's 5e SRD. There's SRD content where you don't need to own the book. That's open source stuff of, okay, what are the rules? And that's open source to know. And
we're not advocating piracy, though.
We're never
Wizards of the Coasts.
Coasts?
Coasts? Wizards of the Coasts?
Hi, wizards. But, D&D Beyond and Roll20, the internet, it's infinite.
But like I was saying, so you've got a lot of your session 0 stuff. You're collabing. So now, what do you actually need to do on the ground to prep for the game? So, like you mentioned, the first thing, Lisa, in whatever way you obtain the rules, know the rules. As a Dungeon Master,
at least vaguely, at least know how to find the rules if something were to come up. Do you think I know the rules for all of the what are they called? Conditions?
Yeah.
No, of course I don't.
Most people don't.
But I know how to find them quickly and easily if I do need them.
And by know the rules, it doesn't mean know every single rule in the book. No one can know that. No one.
Yeah. Or,
unless you're kind of wonderkind.
Oh, you've got that guy in a chokehold. There's a rule that's associated with that. Let me look that up real quick. That's what we mean by knowing the rules.
The main things.
There are rules associated with certain things.
The main things for running the game: know how battle works. So know where that line between normal role playing and initiative happens, and then what that means, how to run that, how difficulty classes work on checks for skills or saves, and creatures, know how to run them because their stat blocks are very different from a player character's, and know how vulnerabilities and weaknesses and immunities and all of that stuff works.
And all that sounds like a lot, but once you get in the groove of it,
it's 3 points. They're pretty basic.
It starts to happen pretty naturally, where you know how to, if you don't know it off the top of your head, which nobody can really expect you to, you know how to find it, or you know that it is something that you need to look for, and in preparing a session, okay, if you know that you are going to have a creature that one of their main abilities is, grappling, have the grappling
Know
rule
how
pulled
grappling
up.
works.
Know how grappling works, yeah. I didn't do that, and
Yeah.
look at me. I'm doing great. I never said I was a good DM. I'm gonna be honest.
You're a good
I'm
DM.
doing fine. I'm doing fine. I'm on a journey. Okay.
Other stuff to prep that isn't necessarily essential, but can really help and take lifting off of the DM's back during the
A
game.
list of names.
NPCs.
A list of names. Literally just a list of names.
That's all your NPCs are. Just a list of names and whatever random personality you want to give them. If they're not some sort of big important NPC, that's all you need. A list of names that the players can choose to talk to and remember and maybe become a recurring thing, or not.
Yeah. It's not like you could put so much work into an NPC and your players will completely ignore them. Or you can make an NPC on the spot and your players adopt that NPC and now you have to play that NPC for the rest of the game. Mm-hmm. These are all possibilities.
Yep.
Be prepared for that.
Pacing, talking about pacing of just and this is going to be a little tougher for newer DMs because it just comes with experience of, like I mentioned before, if the players are there to do a quest, and especially if there's like a time limit on the quest, you've got to be able to nudge them along and push them and push them on whatever path they're supposed to be on to get that thing done, because, like I mentioned before, there could be sessions where it's all roleplay and no combat happens, and that's totally fun and everybody has a great time. But there's gonna be one or more players, including possibly the DM, who has that feeling of, damn, we didn't get anything done this session. Which, you don't, like I say, you don't necessarily need to do, but if it's constantly happening, and if it's multiple sessions of everyone's just kind of doing their own thing and not doing the quest, then if the DM is feeling like nothing's happening, the players may also almost certainly feel like that's happening too, because they should be the heroes or the protagonists. They should be doing something. So you've got to be able to pace your sessions to say, all right, have some time for roleplay, but also have enough time that they can get to this thing that, should happen and leave a good cliffhanger for the next time. Mm-hmm. Anything to say on pacing?
Well, there's in-session pacing, and then there's also, like, the pacing of the campaign overall, and I definitely stumbled with that. So I'm going to speak on this from personal experience. Y'all went up 6 levels in 6 sessions, and then I realized, that's not right.
They're going to be level 20 really soon.
Because I was just, every time you'd ask, did we level up? We fought that big thing. And I'd go, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sure.
But then I realized, no. You don't need to level up every single time you fight a big monster and nearly die. Mm-hmm. That's going to happen. Mm-hmm. You're going to... And this is part of that Session 0 communication preparation stage. Another big thing to talk about is, are you going to do milestone or experience? For
experience points.
For experience points for how your characters are going to level up. So talk to your players, and it depends on the type of game that you're going to play. If you're playing something that's not so much story driven as it is like
combat heavy,
fighting monsters, getting loot, encounter heavy, then experience points would be good. But if you're doing something that's a little bit more story heavy, a little bit more
storier. I like storier.
Stop.
It's more story.
It's more storier. If your game is going to end up being something a little bit more story heavy, a little bit these characters have something that they have to each complete on their own, and there is also like an overarching thing. Maybe make those milestones to have them level up when they, complete some specific goal.
And that goes right into the next 2 I had. One, preparing positive reinforcement, and 2, be prepared to let your players fail. So positive reinforcement just being, okay, how do I reward the players? So there's leveling up, there's experience points depending on how the game goes, but also what do they get if they complete the quest or this leg of the quest? You know, do they get a health potion to get some health back because they just would have been through a big fight? Do they get a magical item? That sort of thing. Or it may be something simple as you gave them the opportunity to roleplay something out and they had a good story moment. And then also being prepared to let the players fail. And this can be kind of tougher for newer Dungeon Masters, where you have the feeling that all Dungeon Masters do, where you want the players to succeed because you want them to get to the end of the thing. You want them to get to the end of the thing because you think that's going to be the most fun. They went from level 1 to level 10 in like 2 sessions and they slay the dragon or whatever. But if there's no potential for failure, like either in the story or on rolls, like don't fudge rolls, respect the dice, because if the players can fail a skill check or can fail a save that does something detrimental to them, that's good. Because then they know what failure is, they know what failure looks like in the world, and they know now they're gonna do like, okay, how can I avoid this? Or in some cases, like they'll fail a skill roll and they'll flub it so badly it becomes a moment that you love, where someone tries to roll acrobatics and they fail, so they crotch themselves on a rope or something.
Failure is also without failure, there's no appreciation for success.
There's no such thing as success.
Yeah. And like accomplishments don't feel like accomplishments if there weren't failures on the way to that accomplishment.
Yeah.
So it's much like life, a balance of all these things. That's really where like all the jokes about like D&D as psychotherapy, yeah, that's not far off. It's you have to learn to deal with these things that are a part of life, and they're a part of this game. It's failing and learning and winning and conquering and, you know, moving on and taking lessons learned and applying them.
And in the most extreme case, you know, the monster rolls a crit and kills one of the PCs. That can be like one of the most like important things that can happen in a campaign, where this character that everyone's come to love has now met their end. And
can I talk about Critical Role now? Can I get 2 minutes?
Sure.
'Cause this
2 minutes.
This is the time.
2 minutes on Critical Role. Go.
All right. So, I mean, it's the best example that I can even think of like a game where, you know, something happens and the consequence of which echoes out and continues to have effects, and the other characters continue to you know, talk about it, and it affects them and it changes them, and like I guess no spoilers, but you know, something happens very early on.
You can spoil it and we'll pause the 2 minutes for a second for everyone's knowledge. I've listened to some Critical Role, watched some Critical Role on YouTube, but that was from like their first campaign, and I didn't finish that one, and I am absolutely not current on their current one. So you can spoil it for me, like I don't care.
Yeah, but I don't want nerds on the internet yelling at me.
By the time this comes out, I don't think it would be a particular spoiler. Like, how long ago was this thing are you talking about?
Listen, there's people who are like, wait, George Washington dies? Like, or...
What?
Whatever.
What are you talking?
Like,
what are you talking about?
Hamilton dies at the end? What do you mean?
What? Of course, George Washington dies. We could just say spoiler alert, and then it's for anyone who doesn't want to hear Critical Role spoilers.
Plug your ears for a second.
Plug your ears.
Take your headphones out and count to 30.
Yeah.
So basically, Molly Mock dies, big beautiful purple tiefling, right? And he's really only in like the first, what is it, like 25, 30 episodes, not even that, of
only
this
30
second
episodes.
Listen, they're on like
only like
100
only like 120 hours of content.
Don't worry about it. I don't know. But he died pretty early on in there, and like until to this day, like the other characters were so affected by his presence that he still gets talked about. And like he deeply affected one of the other characters who was like, she was like kind of a rude and a brat, and like she got a tattoo inspired by him. So it's one of those cases where like it's a really beautiful case to show like how failure and a character death can still, you know,
ripple out
and like still you can still
be creative, make beautiful things from it,
yes.
And none of that would happen if Matt Mercer fudged the roll.
It was just like, no, he doesn't kill you.
Yeah.
Like, D&D is a game of consequences. Tabletop role-playing games are often games of actions and consequences. It's not Dungeons and Dragons, it's Actions and Consequences. I think that's a better name for the game, actually.
Okay. I don't think this is marketable, but all right.
I'd buy it. I don't know.
That's a whole nother thing. That's a whole nother session we're going to do about actions and consequences and player death and player retirement.
Because we have a lot of like examples for that too.
We got off on the tangent, but that's part of the prep as well of allowing that to happen with the players and allowing them to fail. Yeah, be internally prepared to have your friends be a little upset. And, you know, be prepared to be like, hey, it's the dice, it's the situation, and also it's a game. Mm-hmm. This is not personal. And so tapering into all of this talk of preparation that we've been going through, the next important point we want to paradoxically make is there is such a thing as being over-prepared. So we talked about creating a session, talking with the characters about their stories. All of this is bullet points. No one should be writing a book for their character unless they like really like them. But then they're gonna be really sad when their character like gets killed by the dice or something really early on, because that can happen. But also, just speaking of anecdotes, I did this. A friend of mine did this when he was creating a game. Said, hey, I want to run my own custom campaign. So instead of starting with a town and figuring out what was going with that town, both he and I, in our own separate situations, created an entire world. And that is an insane thing to do for your first Dungeons & Dragons role-playing experience, because you've set so much up already that the players are never going to get to or never going to see, because they're in like one small slice of it. And you've already taken away the agency of them to make sort of decisions on how the world works. How are orcs viewed? How are the elves viewed? That can be the standard, fantasy stuff, or it can be completely different based on the feedback from the players. But if that's already set in stone, you've taken that agency away from them. They may not even have noticed it. Don't write a book. Your preparation should be a few pages, bullet points, maybe a few paragraphs, depending on, story or backstory stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad thing to have, like, vague ideas or, things that you pull from, be it, like, other pieces of fiction in video games, It's okay to steal when it comes to story ideas, because this is going to be a story that you're going to share between you and like 4 other people.
That's a whole other session of stealing is okay.
Yeah, that is a whole other episode. But as far as like, okay, you're homebrewing a campaign and you have some ideas for some vague things, but also don't be afraid to be malleable and like change things as you go along, because
there's also...
your players don't know what you know.
The players don't know what you know, and there's also the issue of whatever you have planned, they are going to destroy it.
Absolutely.
They are going to... You are the China shop owner, and they are
the bulls.
4 or 5 collective bulls who are about to run through your shop.
Absolutely.
So don't over-prepare. Just have a small slice ready, and we'll talk more in detail on the next session. But the last thing I have on the list here is in between sessions. So after you're done with your first session, successful, everyone has a good, fun time. First thing you do, take in any feedback. You don't have to have a questionnaire, but you can just ask the players, did you have fun? Did you like X? Did you like this? Is there anything I could have done better? And be open to communicate with the players. be open to anything. Be open to their feedback, but also be like, is there anything that anybody wants to bring up about the group? Anything you want to bring up about the game? And make it a space that everyone feels open to communicate with, even if it may not be right there at the table or in the Zoom call or whatever. If they want to get with you aside, if there's some sort of issue with another player, or if they want some backstory thing going on that they hadn't thought of, that they got inspired in this first session, be open to accept those things in between this session and the next.
Oh yeah, the in-between sessions is a really great point to while you're doing your preparation, your planning for either the next session or little things that you're planning on throwing in later. It's a great point to just send really cryptic text messages to your players that just ask, hey, does your character date anyone, or
are your parents alive?
Is she sure that her mom's dead? Is she sure? Yeah, that's great. It's great and fun and not stressful for anyone involved at all.
Oh, yes, you're talking about this thing I do where I just randomly will blast my players with very personal questions about their characters. Just,
I
can't say
talk smack about it, but I have a lot of fun whenever I do receive those text messages from Varun, because 9 times out of 10, it's something that I have thought of, but every now and again he'll ask a weird question out of nowhere where I'm just like, hold on, I need a minute. I need to think about this.
Wait, I didn't know we were going here.
Yeah. It was really the, are you sure her mom's dead? Are you sure? Yeah. That was the one that I was like, oh baby, let's go.
And then the last couple things, more on the social interaction side. If you see that there's some sort of issue going on the table where someone may not be as comfortable with a player's style or something that's going on in the game, be open to address those things. Again, maybe not very openly. It might be something you get with that player, one-on-one, privately, to talk about. But the Dungeon Master doesn't have to be the one, but it could, if it's a problem player, then it could be either up to the DM, or make it a group consensus thing where if everyone is uncomfortable with this and this player is really having a problem, either change, we may need to change some stuff either in the game, or if it's a player, be like, hey, if it's really bad, you gotta stop doing whatever it is that's making this person uncomfortable, or you've gotta find another table, because this is a game, this is a social situation, and if it's something that is making someone uncomfortable outside of the game, hitting on past stuff, or just maybe not personality stuff.
Or hitting on another player.
Actually hitting on another player when it is very unwanted, not cool.
Or, bringing up people's trauma, or, misgendering people, generally being a not nice person. As the DM, it defaults to you to, rein that in and be like, hey, are you going to keep being that way? If you're going to keep being that way, I might need you to, not be here anymore.
Yeah. And, it defaults to you as the DM, because even if you're not the organizer, you're the one running the game. This is your table. So you should feel that you have that authority to say, if someone's going to be a problem player, you've got to have that ladder. You've got to feel that you have that authority to get rid of them if they're going to be, a bad person out of the game and not want to change, not want to correct themselves.
And there is also the option that's a little bit more, it's a little less used, but you as the DM could also kind of bring in a wild card to rein that guy in.
Oh my god.
I mean,
we're gonna talk about fucking Kirk Crab, where we got some stories of wild cards being brought in to just screw with problem players.
I mean, I wouldn't say that I was brought in to screw with it, but I was definitely
I wasn't talking about you. But then
I'm talking about me.
Now I realize the situation that you're in.
Talking about, yeah. I was, as an example of a DM, how he dealing with, a
It's not the-
potentially problematic player.
It's not the optimal way to deal with
No,
that.
it's not the optimal way of doing it, but if you, as a person, are non-confrontational and you have a friend who is very confrontational and not afraid of confrontation, bring that person in and ask them to observe, see if, there really is a problem. It helps if the person you bring in has experience with D&D, and then have that person, firmly but gently have that confrontation for you.
What do we do if...
It's not, kosher, but it works.
Yeah. I'm always going to be a proponent of you're the dungeon master at your table, so you should feel like you have that authority to...
Absolutely. Yeah.
You shouldn't have to...
As the DM, you should not be afraid of your players.
Yeah. The only time where other players should get involved in those situations is if it's something that's affecting the entire group, or in the most extreme cases I've seen, if things get actually physical, then all right, you're out. Whoever needs to help with this, throw this guy out.
Absolutely.
And
do you have any
very
other
last and the very last thing of in between sessions, once you've done all this prep, you've run your session, you're taking in all this feedback, adjust the next session accordingly. If there was too much combat and the players didn't like that, tone down the combat. If there were things that made them uncomfortable in the world, reassess those things and see if all right, this wasn't the tone that we were discussing, or maybe I overstepped. Think about that. But take in your feedback and adjust the game accordingly for the next time. Some people get the feedback at the table, but don't adjust their game, and that defeats the purpose of the feedback. But that is all the bullet points that I've got. The other stuff that we're going to talk about, we'll get to that next time.
It's really just a primer on
yeah.
DMing.
This is all high-level intro stuff.
There's some stuff in here that we'll eventually come back around to and talk a lot more about. To share our own experiences beyond what we've already shared.
Share our friends' experiences.
Yeah, we're going to have people come in and talk and, talk about DMing different types of games even.
And people's different feelings on being a DM and being a DM for the first time. Where, some people have that Mercer effect, some people don't. Some people look at it as a huge task, other people fall into it and it's no problem.
Yeah, some people see it... Well, some people see that they have to stick to the rules. Some people are a bit more loosey-goosey with the rules. So these are all, valid ways of playing it, and it's... We'll talk about it more as we go on.
We'll dig into that one next time.
Hopefully the past hour prepared you mentally, spiritually.
And with some actual, steps that you can take to...
Yeah, for going on and starting a game, at least getting a group together.
Yeah.
Later on, we'll talk more about some actual, mechanical stuff, how do you even begin to plan out a world? And we have some tips for that, but we'll get into it eventually.
Yeah.
Maybe next time. I don't know.
We'll see. Like you say, we're very loosey-goosey with this.
Yeah, we're figuring it out, as with most things. But I think with that...
Outro.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening, guys.
Like, comment, and subscribe. I got it in this time.
Oh, you did. This has been Oops All Dragons. My name is Lissa.
I'm Varun.
And we'll see you next time. Bye.
We love you.
Oops All Dragons is a group effort. Our show is edited by Noel Hernandez. Our theme was composed by Brendan Lyons. And our logo art is by As If On Cue. Links to more of their work and their social media will be in the show notes.